My guest today is the blogger and author who also runs the MaleysBhoys website. Frank, how are you, sir?
Hi there, how you doing?
Well, Frank, what was life like for you growing up?
I'd say my life growing up was really pretty good, to be honest. I was very fortunate to have, a really good family around me and two particularly good parents who, although I think they would admit they're maybe not perfect, they're really better than you could ask for. They certainly put up with me and my sister and all the inevitable fights between me and my sister, which thankfully aren't quite as often occurrences as they used to be. But that was pretty good. I've lived in East Kilbride my whole life, so other than a lot of snow and a lot of roundabouts, and there are worse places to live. Don't get me wrong, there are better places to live, but it's really good. It's good. I've always had a roof over my head. Never been particularly worried about where the next meal's coming from or whatever. So I've always been very fortunate in that regard.
So, what were your interests?
When I was a kid, dinosaurs. Dinosaurs. Absolutely loved them. Spent my entire time at primary school telling everyone I was going to be a paleontologist, which again seemed like a good idea at the time until I grew up and actually realised that I didn't really fancy spending my life down a hole in Mongolia. But I absolutely loved them. Even now, if my wee cousin or whatever's got a dinosaur book, there's that little bit of me that wants to kind of take it off of him and go and have a read through it and find mistakes and I loved them, but other than that, the main thing's always been Celtic, almost from day one. As far back as I can remember. Some of my first memories are sitting in my living room waiting on my dad coming back for the games to find out who the score was, because obviously this was in a time before Sky Sports News and live score and all this. It's always been a big part. The family sitting around to watch the games and all this kind of thing. Whilst dinosaurs was maybe quite a frivolous thing, Celtic's always been a bit more serious.
Yeah. Your first song, what would that be, and why did you pick it?
The first song I picked was Brain Damage by Pink Floyd. I remember my dad coming through when I was maybe 11 or 12 with this. He's a big Pink Floyd fan, and he would say, I think it was Wish You Were Here or something. He gave us this album and said, go and listen to this. And I remember sticking it in and thinking, this is guff, just wasn't particularly interested in it. Thought it sounded totally different from anything I'd ever heard before, and was it just didn't work for us. I stuck it in a drawer or gave it back to him or something. And maybe a few years later, when I was 15 or 16, midway through high school, I think we were maybe in the car or he had a CD on, and I turned around and said, who's that? It was Pink Floyd. And from there, I took a CD and went away and listened to it and thought, this is actually pretty good. And again, from there, the love of it just kind of grew. Don't get me wrong, I couldn't turn around and tell you their entire back catalogue off the top of my head, but I know a few of the albums fairly well, and I decided to try and pick something which was a wee bit different, because I think most people would pick, Wish You Were Here, Comfortably Numb, all the kind of the big things. So that's something I've tried with all the songs, is maybe to try and not pick the most prominent one.
Brain Damage by Pink Floyd. Can you tell us a little bit more about your book?
It basically came about as a combination of interest and time. For a number of years I was at university, and that kind of went south when my father was ill, who thankfully is fine now. But so once I'd left there, that really was where the website came from. I wasn't sitting about doing nothing, but there's that, especially if you're really interested in something. There was that kind of void that I felt I needed to fill to a degree. Mm-hmm. And the website initially really began as a forum, and that was back in 2011. And people think, oh, that's not that long ago, but in terms of the internet, that was a while ago. I liked Twitter probably more than the website, oddly, considering I've never been on Twitter in my life. As things kind of ticked along, I'd flirted with writing a book. It's the sort of thing you think you're going to do when you're a kid. You think, I'd write a book, how hard can it be, kind of thing. And so I started in this thing, but you never think you're going to finish it. Yeah. I was thinking I could write something historical, something about Celtic. Look at players, look at competitions, look at things they'd won and all this. But I was always very concerned that I'd just be repeating things which people had done, and they would maybe have done better than I could do. That was my big concern initially. I wouldn't like to call it my big break, because that makes it sound kind of shallow, but my father, one of the people he works with, who he's worked with for about a decade at this point, and this lady knows that he's a season ticket holder at Parkhead and he's a big Celtic supporter, had never decided to mention the fact that one of our grandparents was the oldest surviving Celtic player. you would think that would come up in the conversation fairly quickly when you work with somebody who's a Celtic fan, but she'd never mentioned it. So I'd maybe started doing a wee bit for the book, and I think my dad had mentioned, that I was doing this, but in terms of confidence, it was still really low. I never for a day thought I was going to finish the thing, let alone that people were actually going to buy it and enjoy it. Yeah. And it was only really through that I eventually met Bill Boland, who's sadly no longer with us, but he was the first person that I'd spoke to who his story had never really been told before. There was maybe 6 inches in the A to Z of Celts about him, because he'd only played 4 times. He'd tell you that himself, that 4 senior appearances, you're not going to get as many column inches as Billy McNeil. And he'd a wee bit done in the View and all this stuff. Nobody had ever kind of seriously spoken to him. And so eventually, I arranged to meet him and went away down to deepest, darkest Ayrshire in the car. I'd been told that he was this big, burling centre forward in his day. So I walked into his living room to meet this guy, and I'd put the suit on and all this, try and make myself seem fairly smart. And I walked in, and he was a great wee old guy, but he was small, because the only photo I'd ever seen of him when he was a player. So he was this. He's maybe, I think he was about 5'10", 5'11" when he was, at his peak, but big broad shoulders and stuff. And I'd never seen him as an old man, and now he was 91 at this point, so he was, he was your typical wee old man in his cardigan, his shirt and his tie, and he was a bit hunched over. He pulled his cell up out his seat to shake my hand and all this. I've got a grandfather myself who's 90. And I know that they don't have the same stamina that somebody in their 20s does. So I was thinking, right, I don't want to take up too much of this guy's time. And my mum, even before I'd left, had said to me, don't take up too much of his time. So 4.5 hours after I'd went in the front door, we're still sitting there. It was a learning process for me as well as it was him, because I'd never interviewed anyone before. And initially wasn't really getting any joy, but then I think I asked him something about the 37 Cup final, which was the one where I think the official attendance was like 147,000, but in reality it was more like 180. And his eyes just lit up because he was at the game. You could see the cogwheels beginning to turn, and once he started, he just kept going. And it was, from my point of view, it was a dream, because you were getting so much stuff that nowadays, if, for example, if I'm lucky enough to live to be a wee old man, somebody who's my age then would be able to go, Henrik Larsson, here's every single one of his goals on DVD or whatever format it is. Then whereas with somebody like Jimmy McCrory, amongst a plethora of other greats, you just can't do that. I think he scored 550 goals, and I think 5 of them or something have been filmed, and even one of those was a tap in from like a yard. So you can't really judge the man on that. So to actually speak to somebody who had seen some of these guys in the flesh and had played with some of them was just astonishing. And from there, once we got going, I thought, right, I've got this chapter, and I went and I'd redid it and visited them over and over again. It then became a quest in a way to finish it, because I thought, I've got this, I've done this for Bill, he's expecting me to finish this thing. But more than anything, it just gave us the confidence to go, right, well, there's at least something in the book that nobody's done before. I'd let a few kind of select people read the thing, and they said, this is good. So I went away and then ended up with days and days spent in the archives at Hampden and on the internet, and with my head in books, and eventually came up with the historical section of the book. It got finished within maybe a year or so, and then moved on to interviewing people who are Celtic explorers living around the world and all this, people who went on away days in Europe and some of the ridiculous stories that come along with that. So it went from being nothing to coming together very quickly. The first year or so with the historical stuff took forever. I felt I wasn't getting anywhere. I was doing a wee bit here and there. I thought, right, I want to get out for Christmas, and that was maybe in about February. I thought, I'll do this many words a month and we'll be okay. But it turned out to be a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, because you think that proofreading, how long will it take? You don't realise it'll take months. To sum up the books, a conglomeration of stuff really. There's a couple of sections. One is my take on the greatest ever Celtic side prior to 1960, because obviously the support voted for their greatest team in, I think it was 2002, and it was essentially just the Lisbon Lions plus 3 or 4 others, McStay, McGrain, Larson, I think it was Dalglish, and the rest were Lions, and that's not a surprise because they're all phenomenal players, but they're all within living memory for probably the majority of the support, and that's why they were voted into that team. So I decided to try and take a different slide on it and only pick really people not totally prior to the Lions. There's 1 or 2 that could have gone into it if we were using 1960 as a cut-off point, but I decided not to include any of those. So that goes and tells all their individual life stories, and it also charts maybe the first half of the club's history, because if you're talking to somebody like Dan Doyle, that covers largely the 1890s. Jimmy Quinn, you're talking the 6 in a row team, and you very quickly cover major parts of the club's history. The other sections, there's a couple of life stories of Bill, is obviously the most prominent one. There's another one about a guy called Billy Davidson. He was a Celtic supporter who was a member of the accordion band that played the team round when they came back from Lisbon. And so he also then, through his life story, it covers some of the later portion of the club's history, because obviously the 70s, all this kind of thing, interspersed with people, Celtic supporters living in Kenya, Chile, Australia, America, every continent bar Antarctica, as well as away day stories from the Seville run all the way through from Seduva up to culminating in my own story from Seville, which ended up with us sleeping under a motorway, but that's another story. I'm not generally one to talk up my own work. Like if I wrote something, whether it was this or university or school, and they would turn around and say, "Oh, that's really good," I'm one of these people who sees the mistakes in it. I can't look at my book now in case I find a comma that's out of place, and I know it would annoy me. But even I would begrudgingly accept now that I think it's a pretty solid piece of work, especially having spoke, a lot of the older guys who maybe it appeals to more, who've read it, guys in their 70s and 80s who've turned around and said, this is one of the best Celtic books I've ever read. And to me, that's, for somebody who's 23, to be told that, you've written something which somebody who's been supporting Celtic, more than 3 times the amount of time I've been alive, is pretty special. I would like to think there's something in it for nigh on everyone. I've had a few of the younger guys come back and say I really enjoyed the stuff about the away days in Europe, because again, maybe it appeals to them slightly more. I don't think every guy in their early 20s will be interested in a score from the First World War, but some of them will be, obviously, which is great, but some of them will be more interested in the ridiculous things which happen, and we all know that there's some fairly ridiculous things that happen along the way, and also being able to chart that alongside the UEFA Cup run, which again, if you're old enough to remember Lisbon and getting to Milan in 1970 and all this sort of thing, that's brilliant. That'll be the most prominent thing probably you remember. But for somebody my age, despite the fact we won nothing that season, the UEFA Cup run was the biggest thing we've ever seen. I certainly never thought I'd see Celtic in a European final. If you'd have turned around when I was 10 and said Celtic would be in a European final in a couple of years, I'd have laughed at you. One of the things which does get discussed in the book is me and my dad are standing inside the stadium in Seville, and he turns around and 5 or 10 minutes before the teams come out, we've been in the ground for a couple of hours and it's packed to far beyond capacity, to be honest. He turns around to me as the teams are just about to come out of the tunnel, and he says, son, look round and remember this, because this you might never see this again. I might never see this again. This doesn't happen often. I don't really think it hit me then until maybe I was an adult. To stand there and look round, I think I appreciate it more looking back on it. It was pretty special, and it's that kind of thing. It's all these wee stories from people, whether it's about them or their dads or their brothers or their pals. There's that emotional connection which we've all got with the club in our own wee way, and with our families and our friends, and this really tries to tap into it a bit and tell the stories of people who maybe wouldn't have their stories told in a big official book for one reason or another. That's really the main aim, especially the older guys, is to try and capture some of these stories that, not necessarily without my book, but without other people going and speaking to them and charting it. Once they're gone, their stories are largely gone with them, and that's a great shame, because some of them I think could be enjoyed for generations to come, and the history is obviously a huge part of the football club and its support. The soul of the club lies in that, so to try and do my wee bit to tap into it and to record it is, it's a wee honour in itself.
Right, Frank, your second song, what would that be?
The Devil in Me by Jamie N. Commons, who is somebody I'd never heard of up until about 6 months ago. I was sitting playing FIFA, and on games on the Xbox and all this, the background music, it's like lift music, when you're standing, and it's that kind of generic stuff that never really, you could listen to something and then 5 minutes later you couldn't tell you anything about it. It just goes in one ear and out the other. But occasionally you come across a gem. I'd heard this song when I was playing this game, and I went into the credits and looked to see who it was. So then, a quick search on Spotify, and eventually found this guy who, if memory serves me right, he spent most of his life in Chicago. He sounds like he's an African American living in the mid-south of America. He's got that kind of sound about him. So when you find out that it's a wee guy who was born in Bristol, it's a nice wee shock, I suppose. Yeah. But it's a fantastic. The guy's got a fantastic voice. It's, for people like myself who couldn't sing to save herself, it's the kind of thing you would kill for. But it's a great song, and he's somebody well worth checking out, because I don't think a lot of people will have heard of him, and I think he's probably destined for quite big things.
Devil in Me by Jamie N. Collins. Who are your influences and heroes?
Again, it maybe sounds a little bit cliched. I'd have to say that one of the biggest influences on me has been my family. They've been, fantastic throughout my life. Particularly with regards Celtic, it has to be my father and my uncle and my cousins. Who've always been the kind of people who, if you're a wee kid and you want to kick a ball about, or you want to talk about Celtic, or you want to listen to the radio, or you want to watch TV, they've always been people to encourage it. They've always, even though they must get bored, especially people like my gran, who's no longer with us, she must have got bored listening to me rant on and on and on and on about Celtic and Henrik Larsson and George Cadet and all this sort of thing. I would never shut up about it, and I still don't. My sister, that's one of the few things that does cause disagreements with the two of us, is that if I was allowed to, I would just talk about it all the time. I just don't get bored, and she's got no interest in football at all. She just doesn't get it, which is fine. Even she has to put up with me, I think, about when I'm talking about it, particularly with the book, the proofreading and stuff. She actually helped do a lot of that, despite the fact she's got no interest in the subject at all. With regards, heroes, I've always had a great admiration for Henrik Larsson, Louis Rafik, all this sort of thing. In later years, I'm sure a lot of people won't be too surprised to hear that a big influence is probably Willie Maley, in the sense that somebody that I'd heard the name, I knew a wee tiny bit about him probably when I was in my kind of teens, and it was only really when I went and looked into it years ago that I thought a lot of the stuff which had happened to him, and a lot of the things he'd been involved in, and the beliefs that he held, were fairly relevant, some of them still today. That's not to say he was perfect. He was pretty obstreperous. I think he didn't want to get on the wrong side of him. One of the people that my dad's always had a great kind of admiration for, I think, was John F. Kennedy. He's up on the wall in the house and stuff, because my dad's always been interested in that. I suppose that was maybe a story of how people can go, particularly people who have some level of relation or descendants from Ireland, and the famine and all this, all the stuff that went along with that. He was maybe somebody who showed that over the courses of a few or several generations in a family, you can go from being not nothing, but as well as nothing, to something a lot more meaningful.
So your third song, what would that be?
My third song is Go Let It Out by Oasis. Again, they're one of these bands that I think a lot of people who are my age have always had a kind of great affinity for. Personally, myself, I suppose I developed a love of them thanks to my big cousin, because he was Oasis mad. He still is. He maybe isn't quite so vocal about it now, but he absolutely loved them. And whether it was him sitting playing music in his car or in his room, or sitting playing on the guitar, it's always been something I've liked. And again, the older and older you get, the more and more into them maybe you can get. And I was lucky enough to see them the last time they came to Glasgow before they split up. So that was pretty impressive. And again, this is just as a song choice, it's something that I've always liked, but it's not maybe the most prominent one. Most people go for Wonderwall or Supersonic or something, and don't get me wrong, they're great songs, but to try and go for something a wee bit different and maybe something that some people might not have heard, although I think probably with this one most people will have heard it, but it's a good song.
So what are your earliest memories of going to Celtic Park?
20th of April 1997. Again, I didn't always know the date, but with writing the book, I went back and worked this out. I knew that my first game with my dad was a 3-0 win over Aberdeen at Parkhead. I think he'd bought me a programme, but you know what it's like, they get lost or binned, or it may well still be up in the loft. But when I was doing this, I actually put a thing out on Twitter and said, look, does anyone have this programme? I'll pay you for it. And somebody who, I won't mention them by name, but they pretty much said, what's your address, and popped it in the post, and came the programme without any charge at all. My earliest memories, my dad sits in the south stand. He's been there for 32 years, something like that, and when I was 6-year-old, I wasn't 6'3", so I remember the ball, bright sunny day, and the ball going through 15-20 minutes into behind the back line, and George Cadetti goes running after it. The hares bouncing up and down, and everyone, it's at the far end, it's at the Lisbon Lions end. So I remember standing up as he runs through on goal, and everyone's standing up, so I can't see, and I'm ducking and I'm diving, trying to look through the crowd, and just as if by fate, a wee gap opened up just so I could see him, dink the ball over the goalkeeper and it go in the back of the net. So we won 3-0 that day, and in my head it's always going to be a very special memory, although I think most people wouldn't regard it as that, because I think Rangers had won their 9th title in a row the week before, or a few days before or something, so this was the first home game after that. And I think within the wider support there was probably quite a feeling of dread that we need, this is getting serious now, we need to stop this. But to somebody who was 6, who'd only ever known Rangers pretty much winning everything, that just totally sailed over my head at that point. I understood it a bit better the next year when we did win the league. But that day, against Aberdeen, I would imagine 99% of the people who were there either don't remember it or don't remember it with any sort of great fondness. But for me, to see Celtic in the flesh was a huge deal. I think now, maybe, I know myself, I certainly take it for granted to a degree. I can jump in the car and be at Parkhead in an hour. I've had a season ticket now for a decade, so seeing Celtic is a fairly regular occurrence. But particularly through speaking to the guys who live in America and around the world and stuff, or even just people who can't afford it, which there's a lot now, is when I think back to that first game, it makes me appreciate seeing Celtic, because it means a lot to a lot of people, and the fact that I can do it regularly now is something which I certainly know I shouldn't take for granted, although I probably do to some degree. But the first game was great. It was the size of the ground and all this. The Lisbon Lions stand wasn't even built, if memory serves me right. we might still have had the temporary stand at the other end, but I just remember looking up at the north stand, which is where I sit now. I'm away up the top of that now. I remember looking up at it and thinking it was absolutely enormous. I couldn't believe how big it was. I'd have laughed at you if you'd have said that I'd be sitting up the top, in a few years. But it was brilliant, despite the fact that we were second in the league and we weren't gonna win it again. My foresight only went to the 90th minute, so we won. I was delighted, and I imagine I talked my family's ears off about it for months. But that was great. I'm lucky I can remember it as well, because I know some people who go to the games particularly young, if you're there when you're 2, you maybe can't remember it so much, but to have been able to go and sit next to your dad and jump about and all this, it was like a normal goal celebration. Everyone stands up, claps their hands, but to me it was like the place was going nuts, because I'd never seen it before. I'd never experienced it. In my head, it seems like it was, like scoring against Barcelona or AC Milan or something, whereas in reality it wasn't. It was nowhere near that. Everyone just stood up, that was a good goal, bit of applause. But in my head it was, this huge eruption of noise and all this, because I'd never heard it before, and it was brilliant.
Right, we're on to your fourth song.
The fourth song is Doom and Gloom by the Rolling Stones. Again, this is one that my family probably have to take some level of credit for. My dad and my aunt are huge Stones fans. Again, they were one of these bands that when I was a kid I'd heard and thought, I don't get it. But you get to that age when you're in your mid-teens where you actually think, yeah, I'll give them that. They are pretty good. And it's just to pick a song which maybe isn't quite so prominent. But it's a fantastic bit of music, and I don't know how the guys are still doing it at the age they're at now, but they're magnificent. They're great.
Doom and gloom, the Rolling Stones. So, what irritates you?
A lot of stuff. I hate other drivers. For a start, I've been driving for a couple of years now, and I suppose there's maybe a lot of people who would agree with me in this, but you don't regard yourself as the perfect driver, you don't regard yourself as a brilliant driver, but you absolutely hate people who act like idiots when they drive, whether it's they drive too fast, they drive too slow, they don't indicate, whatever. That really annoys me. It's a shame in a way, because the majority of people are good, but you don't notice them because they're good and they bypass you or they go on your way, and they fade out your memory in an instant. But the ones who are bad or who do something really stupid, stick in your mind, and that really, really annoys me. Again, the occasional guy you see on a bike, don't get me wrong, they're perfectly entitled to cycle on the road. They cut across traffic lights and stuff when they're at red and all this kind of thing. I hate it. I'm also not a big fan of folk who smoke and then just blow it in your face. I hate that. And I hate folk who don't hold open doors for you. But other than that, I could be here all day listing things that spring into my mind that I don't like. Irritates is maybe it's almost quite a playful thing. It's not a really important wee thing. There's things, far more serious things, which really, really wind me up or anger me. But things that irritate me, it can be really kind of just stupid stuff that shouldn't even be an issue. Things like one of the long running themes in my house is, when somebody empties the bin, do they put a new bin bag in then, or do you have to wait until the next person has a bit of rubbish that they put it in? Me and my sister have been fighting about it for years, and I think, to be honest, we actually just do it purely to annoy each other. It's lots of wee things. There's nothing major. Just if you're ever driving in front of me, don't do anything stupid and please indicate.
Right, your fifth song?
The fifth song is Folsom Prison Blues by Johnny Cash. Again, this is one that came through from the family. This was actually my uncle. He had a great love of Johnny Cash. He used to play him a lot, and again, I never really got it. I can't remember whether he gave us an album or whether he just played it one night. But I remember him sticking on this. I think it was Greatest Hits of Johnny Cash, or it might even have been the Folsom Prison live recording. I remember sitting there thinking, this is actually pretty good, and it was only maybe a year later or so that I was either maybe on the internet or I was in a shop or something, and I saw Johnny Cash and thought, alright, I haven't listened to him since that time, and bought this CD or clicked on it or whatever it was and downloaded it, and I've always loved the guy. He's your quintessentially cool guy. The sort of guy who I think would walk into a room, you'd know immediately that he was there. You wouldn't catch me wandering out with hair like that or whatever, but a fantastic musician with some great stuff. Okay,
Frank, how do you relax?
Generally with a pint of Guinness in my hand. For relaxing, it's a lot of the usual stuff, listening to music, going to the pub, spend a bit of time with your pals or with your family or whatever. Me and my dad and my cousins we'll go and do the pub quiz occasionally, and I was about to say that I watch Celtic to relax, but that actually is not always the case. If anything, a lot of the time they have the directly opposite effect on you. I must admit, driving when it's not people who are annoying me, I do like to drive to relax. There's not a lot better than sticking on a good CD, and a nice sunny day, which to be honest we don't get a lot of, but when you do get them, go and finding one of the country roads and just going along for an hour or something. I've got my guitar and to do that kind of thing, and I used to play a lot of poker, but again, that wasn't maybe always relaxing. Books, I suppose, is not a surprise. Again, if it's a nice day and I can sit out the back in the sun with a bottle of beer and a good book, which you can probably guess generally what the subject's vaguely about, it'll keep me amused. plus we've got the dog and all that, and you know, he's always want to go out for walks, or you know, make you throw something for him, and he's very good at, I think a lot of people who have pets will know this, they're very good at times at when you're really worked up about something which isn't that important but which really annoys you, they're very good at either taking your mind off it or making you realise that, see, in reality this actually isn't that bad. But again, it's really just, you know, the family playing a big role in your life, that these, you know, they're people that you can go and you can spend a bit of time with, and even if something, you know, really, really serious has happened, there's still the potential for everyone to fall about laughing. And that's, you know, something which you can't buy. Again, if anyone's ever sees me in the pub, I'll have a pint of Guinness and I'll be quite happy. And I'll sit and bore you for a few hours.
That takes us on to your sixth song.
Premonition by Joe Satriani. I would imagine a lot of people have never heard of Joe Satriani. I would probably regard him as one of, if not the best guitarist on the face of the earth. This is actually a bit of a role reversal, because he's somebody that I actually recommended to my dad, who he'd said, oh, you know, what does he do? He plays guitar. Does he sing? No. Does he have a singer? No. It's instrumental, right? Because I had a couple of tickets to see him in Glasgow a good few years ago now, and for one reason or another, the guy I was meant to be going with couldn't make it, I think, and he'd only cancelled on the day. And I said to my dad, look, you know, do I come along? And he's like, oh, I don't know, sort of thing. I don't know if it'll be quite my thing. And my mum said, oh, you should go. So he came along, and I was marginally concerned he might get bored, because when you go and see Joe Satriani, he gets up for 2 hours and just really produces sounds out of a guitar which you wouldn't think were possible, but he'll go on for 2 hours, and it's very, very rare you'll hear a song with words in it. And off the top of my head, I think I know one where somebody sings, you know, out of maybe 80, and even then you don't hear it at concerts and you think you might get bored. But we come out at the end, and he was bowled over. He was like, I can't believe how good the guy is. Because especially, you know, you see something, a CD or whatever, they've had time to do it in a recording studio. They can make mistakes, they can edit them, they can do it again, they can have several goes at it. But to see somebody stand up for 2 hours live and play a guitar that well, without making a mistake, or at least being so good that you can cover up your mistakes, is just astonishing. My dad has actually been to see him with me again, you know, so if you're looking for a good guitarist, or even music to relax to, because it's very good at, I suppose it may be like Pink Floyd in that way, that there's that kind of melodic feel to it, that you can sit with headphones on and shut your eyes, and you know, if you're wanting something to kind of jump about to or nod your head or whatever, it can do that. But equally well, if you're just wanting to sit and try and forget about stuff or turn your brain off, it's brilliant. And he's just a cool looking guy, you know. He's bald, and he's always wearing these really dark, cool sunglasses. Never takes them off. Doesn't matter if it's, you know, a dark concert hall or a bright day outside. He's almost always got his sunglasses on. I think he's actually maybe quite a strange guy, considering that most of them have got no lyrics. How on earth he comes up with the names seems to be just chance, you know. There's times he says that there's one of these songs he said he dreamt it and just woke up and wrote it, which seems really, really bizarre. Or even, you know, as I said, the song names. There's a song called, I think it's the Mystical Potato Head Groove thing, right? Which is just totally barmy. I mean, the guy's nuts, but he can sure play a guitar, especially somebody who tries to play. Myself, and I'm not good. Don't get me wrong. I'm pretty poor. For somebody to be that good, it's amazing. You know, you can't help but aspire to it. If I could play, you know, 1% as well as Joe Satriani, I'd be bleeding delighted. But it's a great song, and again, it's maybe not one that the few people who have heard of him might not have heard this, because again, it's not one of these kind of bigger ones. But if you've ever got an extra hour or something, go on Spotify or buy a CD or something. If you like guitar, you won't regret it.
That was Premonition by Joe Satriani. Right, Frank, what does the future hold for you?
I've started on what may eventually become another book, like the previous one, and I don't believe it'll ever actually become one. But I've done about 90,000 words since the new year, and I've got a couple of interviews lined up. So that may well become another book at some point in the future. I doubt, to be honest, that I can publish a book when I'm 23 and then hang around for another few decades and not do another one. Generally speaking, I think a lot of the guys who have done a book about Celtic will go on to do others, and I don't know of any of them offhand, other than maybe Stephen Sullivan, the guy who wrote the Sean Fallon book, who's, I think he's in his early 30s. I hope I'm not doing him an injustice. I really haven't met anyone else of a kind of similar age to me who's written a book about Celtic, so I'm sure it may well become another one at some stage, but equally well, I don't want to go and rush another one out necessarily for this Christmas. I mean, it's a possibility, but it's probably unlikely. If you'd asked me a month ago, I'd have said yeah, maybe, but I've hit a major writer's block since then. I haven't done it for a couple of weeks. I wouldn't want to put something out and it not be as good. In a way, writing a second one is actually more difficult because people have a standard that they expect, but not just that, you've covered bits of the club's history, you've done something. You don't want people to be paying for the same thing again. I'm sure another book will probably appear at some point in the future. It might be a year or two. The timeline's a bit flexible at the minute. The other thing with regards to the football stuff that I'm doing is I've started up this new website, Vocal Football. It should be going live probably mid-May before the World Cup. Just to give us a platform really where I can write a bit more generic stuff, not specifically focused around Celtic. MaleysBhoys is a website for writing about Celtic's magnificent. Some of the people that I've met have been brilliant, but it's very, it's hemmed in that regard. I don't think most people would appreciate it if I was, going to start writing about River Plate and all this kind of thing. It might not be of an interest to them. With regards the Celtic stuff, the main thing going forward for me is really just more than anything the charity work. I think now we're about £20 short of having raised £4,000 since the website started in January 2011 for a few different charities. For me, that's a great thing, just to be able to try and do something good. But again, you couldn't do that without the generosity of the folk which follow the website and they take an interest in it. The charitable soul of the Celtic support's quite widely known from day one, and although I'm sure, if you asked any Celtic supporter how you would run the club at the minute, we'd all have a slightly different take on it. We'd all do it in our own unique wee way, but the generosity that the support embodies is still most certainly there. You occasionally will get people who'll turn round and they'll send you a wee email or private message, especially people at times who you've never spoke to before. There's people who follow you who you'll speak to most weeks. If you put up a question or something, or you something's happened and everyone's talking about it, they'll offer an opinion and you'll speak to them and you get to know people's views on stuff, and it's great. But you'll occasionally get somebody who's a follower who never really tweets, certainly never tweets you, but you'll just get a random message saying, oh, here's a donation for 50 quid or something, which is, it's a lot of money, particularly in the early days, for people to trust, you with their money, because, you're not a registered charity. To a lot of people, again, certainly in the early days before I'd met a lot of them, you were a faceless entity. And it shows that they're not just generous, they're very, very trusting. I wouldn't say that it weighs down on your shoulders, but you're very, very aware of it. You become, say it's your own money and you're donating something to charity, you would, for example, make a donation and you might get a receipt and you'd bin it or whatever, whereas now with this you have to be super careful, like I've got a separate bank account for it and all this kind of thing, so it never get mixed in. But it's magnificent to be able to try and do something positive, especially as a wee site. Don't get me wrong, we've got a lot of followers on Twitter and all this, but I know myself, we're nowhere near some of the level of the bigger websites, which are more like communities than anything else. Whether it's Kerrydale Street or whoever, or even the Green Brigade. There's a huge, groups of people who are very prominent. Increasingly as time goes on, I'm just interested in really doing the charity stuff and knocking along doing historical pieces and all this kind of thing. My days of trying to run a forum and all this are done. I think initially I was maybe fairly ambitious, thinking I can maybe get a forum or whatever which could maybe rival some of the others, but partly the internet's changed, partly it's people are more interested in immediate conversation and stuff, and partly it's just that these sites are massive and they're run so well and a lot of the people that have been on them have been there for so long that that's just what they do. You know, there's people who will never go on Twitter, but they're always on CQN. You know, there's people who are always on Twitter, they'll never go on Celtic Minded, or there's people who are always on Celtic Minded who would never come to us. You know, there's a lot of people who use their own wee bit, and then that's, I think, to a large degree how the support communicate online, and it's great because you do get, particularly on Twitter, you get a wide array of views, to put it nicely. You know, you could go on Twitter and make a point, and you could find somebody with the most, you know, outlandish view in one direction, and then the total opposite with somebody else, and then the two of them can argue about it. Either 10 minutes later they'll both agree to disagree, or one of them will have persuaded the other one, or they'll both agree that actually maybe it's more a grey issue than I thought it was. And that's great because it allows people to talk, and it also it gives the support a great medium to communicate. You know, you think about the time of Celts for Change and all this. If the internet had been around then, you know, it would have only been stronger, although I'm sure you would have had several, you know, arguments breaking out and all this kind of thing. With regards to the charitable stuff, it's magnificent. You know, can't praise them highly enough.
One thing you would change in Scotland, what would that be?
If it was frivolous, I'd change the weather. If it was serious, without getting kind of too deep, I'd love to see Scotland as a more open, welcoming country. I think that, again, the Celtic support, there's a lot of people have some relation to, say, Ireland. You know, there's a lot of them now who've connections with far-flung bits of the world. You know, I think there's an increasing support of you know, Glasgow Asians and stuff, for example. But more than anything, I would love to see, you know, Scotland as a society whereby nobody cared about, you know, the colour of your skin, or which, I was about to say which religion you are, but even in Scotland, which particular type of a particular religion you are, or no religion at all. I'd love to see us come to a time where, you know, we didn't have to sit and watch orange walks go down the street and all this kind of thing. I think that the majority of people in the country are brilliant. I think that it's quite notable now that the country is progressing, is moving in the right direction with regards to inclusiveness and stuff, but there are still people who are, for one reason or another, pretty entrenched in their views. I myself would really love to see the end of that. I think that there's a lot bigger issues to fight about than you know, which particular part of religion you follow, or which school you go to, or whatever else. You know, the fact there are people who can't feed themselves or heat their homes, or they don't have a home at all. They are far bigger issues in my head. It's maybe a reflection on human nature that we all maybe have our own wee interest or thing that we get drawn to and that we seem to care about more than others. I mean, I know myself, you know, football, realistically, if you take it to its absolute base level, it's guys kicking a ball around the field. It's not really that important, but equally well, it's massively important. So I'd really just like to see us move forward, and I think to be fair, it is happening slowly but surely. And maybe if we start getting better warming, or better weather with global warming, suddenly things will be a wee bit better.
If you could have a wee drink with anyone from history, who would it be?
Jimmy McCrory, maybe, or maybe Willie Maley. It would have to be one of the guys from the early portion, or the early part of the club. Even somebody like John Glass and all this. I think if I had to pick one, it would be Willie Maley, purely because, you know, the guy was directly involved with the club for just under 53 a year. You know, by the time he died in 1958, he'd seen the club go from nothing, you know, from an idea that a few people had in a wee church in the East End, through to being at times the best team in the Commonwealth, the best team in the Empire, and even debatably at one stage when the six in a row team were playing very possibly the best footballing team on earth at that stage. I'd love to see what these guys thought of the club now. You know, especially the ones who were there in the very, very earliest days. You know, when the first time they won the Scottish Cup and they're bringing it back through the streets. There's kids and adults standing bare feet in the street. You know, they've come out of their, I can't even really call it homes, more like slums, to see this bit of silverware go by, into, you know, that victories like that, particularly in the early days. I mean, don't get me wrong, the country ain't perfect now, but comparatively, it's the state of your average Celtic supporter is far better than it was back then. You know, the fact that the team gave these people hope, you know, they could win something, and whilst their life might be not particularly nice, to put it, you know, bluntly, for one night or for one weekend or for 90 minutes, they could take their mind off of it. And I think that people like Brother Alfred and John Glass and Willie Maley and James Kelly and all these kind of people had a great influence in that. I think though if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Maley, just because he was there. He was really the last survivor of the earliest breed. If it was somebody who was still alive, I'd probably pick Lubomir Moravchik. I was one of these kids at school that, I suppose this maybe reflected my song choices, where I haven't picked the most prominent ones. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore Henrik Larsson. I love him to bits. But my favourite player when he's around was Lubo. Just a phenomenal talent, technically magnificent, but always just came across as a really nice guy. So if I could sit and have a beer with somebody who's still around, I'd probably go for Lubomir Moravchik.
Great stuff. Who's your favourite cartoon character?
How can you prepare for a question like that? I don't know if you'd really call it a cartoon. I always loved Thunderbirds as a kid, despite the fact you could see the strings and stuff above their heads. I always loved Thunderbirds. But if I was to go for a proper cartoon, I'd probably pick somebody like, Mo Sizlak from The Simpsons. Somebody, or a Pooh or something like that. One of these, maybe, not the main characters, but one of these guys that when you saw them, they were always quick for a good laugh, and they were always very well written. Even Montgomery Burns, the sort of evil guy sitting with a big crooked nose and tapping his fingers together and generally just been really menacing. That's the kind of character that appeals to me. Somebody well written but a good laugh.
Your penultimate song?
The seventh song is Die With Your Boots On by Iron Maiden, who's somebody I've absolutely loved from really the get-go when I first heard them. I was actually had to tone down some of the music I picked for this, because I think that I'm quite honest about the fact I do have a wee love of heavy metal. I'm not one of these guys running around with long hair and dark clothes or anything, but I do like it. But equally well, if I went for some of the more extreme stuff, I'm fairly sure that quite a lot of the listeners would be turning off pretty quickly. So I've avoided all of that. But Maiden are a bit more, I suppose, fairly mainstream-ish, and they're not screaming into the microphone or anything. You don't really get it with this song because it's fairly short, but I particularly love some of their longer ones, which they tell a story, which a lot of songs don't really do now, and they'll go on for 12 minutes, or even one of them like 26 minutes long. That's brilliant. I've always liked old music, whether it's going back to Johnny Cash, or in more recent times kind of Iron Maiden or the Stones. I think this is maybe, off the top of my head, I think it's maybe the 80s or something this came out. I don't know, it just appeals to me more than the modern stuff, and it's one of their shorter songs. It's one of their more maybe upbeat songs, but it's also one that folk might not have heard before, and I love it to bits.
Right, we've come to the part of the programme where I give you the complete works of the dandy and a copy of the Bible to take with you to your island. Would you like a copy of the Bible?
Yeah, why not? Be good as a doorstop or something. No, I shouldn't say that. I would take a copy of the Bible.
Which other book would you take, and why?
Being frivolous, I'd probably take a book about how to make smoke signals or something. But to take it a bit more seriously, I'd probably take the Lord of the Rings, or if I could be really, really greedy, the complete works of Tolkien or whatever. But the Lord of the Rings, it maybe alludes slightly to the bit of a geek, which I would be open to admitting that I am. Again, it's one of these things which I think you either love it or you hate it. My family love Harry Potter. They love it to bits. I hate it with a passion. I mean, don't get me wrong, the films are okay and stuff, but it just doesn't really appeal to me so much. Right. Whereas the Lord of the Rings I absolutely adore. It's one of these films that I could sit and watch tons and tons of times and never get bored. And the books, again, it would, if you're going to be sitting on a desert island and you're going to be there for a while, you're going to want a big book, and you're going to want something fairly extensive that's interesting, and that maybe would keep your spirits up. So I suppose, and maybe I suppose it involves a long journey and stuff, and I think you'd be taking a long journey back if you were ever getting off your island. So yeah, one of the best pieces of work ever written, bar none. If I could write something like that, not only would I be rich, but I'd I'd be delighted. You know, it's easy in a way to write non-fiction.
Yeah.
You know, you can write something about the history of Celtic or Manchester United or whoever else, see providing it's factually correct. There's a limit to how bad it can be. You know, in terms of what's in it and how it's written stylistically and all this thing, that can be played with, and that can make or break a book. But for somebody to create a world like that, or any other the great kind of pieces of fiction, is something which I really admire, and I'd love to be able to do something like that. Yeah, you have to appreciate something at that standard.
Right, a luxury, something to make your life in Ireland a bit more bearable, and it can't be a human being, can't be a mobile phone. I
suppose a life supply of Guinness isn't an option. I don't know. I would maybe, if I was being sensible, I'd maybe have picked an iPod or something. If I was going to be stuck on a nice hot island for years and years by myself and I had nobody to talk to, a few kegs of Guinness wouldn't go amiss.
Right, your final song.
Final song is "The Memory Remains" by Metallica. Again, this is one of these bands which I've always, had an affinity with, that probably most people wouldn't listen to. That's why I kept Iron Maiden and Metallica towards the end, because I know they're not everyone's cup of tea. As somebody who plays guitar and who maybe appreciates it, I like that kind of thing. I like my music loud, and it's maybe a young guy's view. I don't think there's many people who you could flick through their iPod and you'd find Metallica followed by Ray Charles, for example. But if I'm in the right sort of mood for it, I enjoy really nothing more than turning the car stereo right up or whatever. Again, there's somebody I've seen live, and I think my ears were ringing for days after it. But they're certainly not everyone's cup of tea. But if you're one of the people who do love them, you tend to, people either have no interest at all or they love them to bits, and you don't find many people think, oh, they're okay. And again, this was just a case of picking a song which maybe wasn't quite so prominent, and also picking one that didn't go on for ages and ages and ages, which was a problem with the previous choice as well. I didn't want one that was going on for 10 or 12 minutes. So just love turning it up and going for it, I suppose.
Frank from MaleysBhoys, thank you very much for being a Desert Island Tim.
It's a pleasure, thank you.